Diane O'Connor, and in this series, we will hear from NBSRT members who have retired and have gone on to their next chapter following their dreams. We will meet people who have taken the leap and have gone on to have great adventures and wonderful life experiences. Our dream catcher today is artist Theresa MacKnight. Theresa MacKnight has always known she was an artist, beginning with incessant drawing as a child. Growing up, she spent a lot of time outdoors, wandering and exploring on the coast of St. John's West Side, where she was raised, and the woods and rivers of Charlotte County, where her extended family lived. Drawing and making things was inseparable from her identity. She says that becoming an artist was less of a decision and more of an inevitable path. Theresa trained in fine arts at Mount Allison University and the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. Following this, she earned her BEd from UNB and embarked on a teaching career, teaching art in St. John, the Miramichi, and St. Stephen. While teaching art allowed her to continue to cultivate her creative side, Theresa longed to focus solely on her painting. So, in taking early retirement, she was able to paint full-time and return to her joy of creating that drew her in the beginning. But with everything, there is a balance. So she keeps her teaching skills sharp by offering workshops and adult art classes. Theresa's paintings are well known in public and private galleries throughout New Brunswick. She has been the recipient of Arts NB grants and has been invited to do several residencies, most recently at the Beaverbrook Art Gallery. She is an active member of the NB Arts community, serving on the board of Sunbury Shores Arts and Nature Center. Theresa lives in St. Andrews and works mainly in oil and charcoal, both in her studio and in plein air. Welcome to Dream Catchers, Theresa.
Thank you, Diane.
So, Theresa, did you always know that you wanted to be an artist?
I would say yes, I did know I wanted to be an artist. I don't think that I knew what that meant as a young child. It was something that I did. I made things and drew things, as I said, incessantly as a child. And it was maybe an escape, but for me, it was play, but it was also quickly becoming part of my identity. And it maybe was less of a choice and more of something that I saw as inevitable. And I just followed that straight line wherever it took me. And as I approached high school, I knew in a stronger and stronger way that that would be a career path for myself, and started to lay it out as I move forward. So yes.
Yeah. So then you became a teacher. How did that teaching shape your career as an artist? And how did you keep your art practice going while teaching and also raising a family?
I would say that teaching really did have a great and many positive effects on my art practice. When I was quite young, I was quite shy and probably still am quite introverted. So I had to make decisions. I had to decide that I was going to overcome that tendency toward shyness and quietness. And I needed to become more articulate in order to teach, in order to engage a class. Teaching taught me how to read a room, as we all know that we must do as teachers, how to watch what's happening and understand how the students are taking in or not taking in what we're trying to put across. Teaching taught me how to manage my time and to be very disciplined, to not waste time, how to structure my day, how to be organized and be professional. And I take those skills and I still use those skills in my art practice so that I can be more productive and balance my life with my art practice. I am a mother. I have 2 sons and a husband. So I did have to balance teaching full-time with raising a family. I had a lot of support at home. My husband is extremely supportive, and my extended family as well. They supported my work and they treated it as seriously as I did. And I somehow managed to create barriers between parts of my day, so that my teaching day, my parenting, my mom time, I kept quite separate from my practice, from my studio practice. And keeping those boundaries and that structure of the day is part of what I learned to do and had to learn to do in teaching. I also kept my studio at home. We built a studio next to the playroom so that there was a constant natural engagement with the children, and no time lost between going to the studio and interacting and mothering. So all of those things combined, I was able to keep my practice going to some extent throughout my teaching career. I usually would have a solo show every couple of years and then work toward it, another show in another couple of years. And maybe I wasn't as active as I wanted to be, but I was as active as I could be during that time.
Yes, you're juggling a lot of balls,
Yeah.
motherhood, teaching, and being an artist. That's a lot to take in. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So where do you find your inspiration, and what gives you the most joy when you're painting?
Inspiration uh, usually comes easily, and most easily if I don't try to look for it. I think that when you spend years working and thinking visually, it doesn't take much for an idea to come to you quickly through just your experience of your day. For example, you may see something as you're outside for a walk. You may see a color that's brilliant up against another color, or an object that seems to contrast with another object, or shapes, people, ideas. I am interested in places and familiar places, and watching how they change from day to day and through the seasons, and how people and animals enter and interact with those spaces. And all of those things combined sort of rest maybe in my subconscious, perhaps, and then ideas will just come to me. And when they do, I record them in a sketchbook. I usually make little drawings and little sketches and play with them, see if they'll work, see if they'll translate into paintings of different sizes. And so through that process, I can edit and decide which ideas are actually the strongest and are worth the time to invest and bring them forth as paintings.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite piece of art that you've done?
I think my favorite painting of recent years was called Palette Head. And that painting is hanging at the Gallery on Queen in Fredericton right now. It is a self-portrait, although my face isn't visible. And it's a nighttime scene. And I am standing almost in a spotlight, which I created with a flashlight outside. And I have a palette in front of my face. And I'll just show you quickly. And this is the pose that I'm using.
Oh, interesting. Yes, I've
And
seen that painting on your website. Yeah.
yes,
Interesting. Yeah, very cool.
I think this is the actual palette that I used. And I don't know why I decided to do that. I was playing with props outside, doing a Photoshop in the backyard, and it just happened. And as I was editing the photographs, I realized that this pose with the palette in front of my face said a lot about how I feel about how I communicate with the world, which is visually and through my work, especially now that I'm painting almost every day. So I do see painting as communication. So by holding the palette in front of my face, it was almost like a stand-in for words and language. So that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, neat. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about inspiration, but has
Mm.
anybody in particular, like an artist, inspired you?
That's a hard question to answer, because it's hard to single out one person. I'm inspired. As at a young age, I was inspired by my own family members, grandparents that I admired. I admired their skills and the way they were in the world, and my parents. Teachers, certain teachers really inspired me, and I would look up to them and think, I want to be like them. It wasn't so much I want to do what they do. It's like I want to be like them and how they are in the world. Um, there were a few art teachers that I found inspiring, and I saw them as beacons in a way, showing me as a young person, yes, you can be a teacher, you can have one career and have an active, alive career in your studio at the same time. So I saw those teachers as examples. So I am inspired by um, those mentors. In more recent years, I have had a mentor that I've worked with in a formal and informal way. Her name is Maggie Rose, a wonderful artist and friend. I've learned a lot from her in the last 5 years or so. So, and there's so many artists, peers, other artists in New Brunswick that I look to for inspiration. So that may be a long answer, but I guess it's a true one.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we know, you were a teacher, but then you retired early. What
Yeah.
brought you to that decision?
Well, it wasn't an easy decision. And I will say that earlier in my career, I did plan to go longer. I thought that I could keep those balls in the air longer. And it did become more difficult later, as my children were entering university years and starting to do more things on their own and getting out of the house and back in the house and out of the house and back in the house, as we know they do.
Yeah.
I had more time to invest in more learning and professional development. So I really went after more professional development in painting. And the more I did that, and the more skills that I started to put into my toolbox, I found the pull toward the studio became much stronger. And I will be honest, in the last couple of years of teaching, it was more difficult to concentrate on my work in the classroom. And I wondered if I was able to give my best in the classroom to the level that I had been earlier, because my mind was always thinking about painting and I'd have to bring myself back, back to the classroom so I could stay productive. And then with the encouragement of my husband and family, they asked the question, why don't you retire and make painting your full-time profession? We know this is what you want to do. And I did listen to them. It took me a while to get there because it's a bit scary. It's a huge change and you can't go back. You can't undo it. But I would say it was absolutely the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it must have been a bit like having a split personality where you were
Yes.
on the one hand in the classroom and then on the other hand you were in the studio and going back and forth. It is difficult.
Yes, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
a good way to describe it.
Yeah. So what have been some milestones in your career since you've retired? So how has that taken off?
Well, it's been very exciting. I've had, since I have more time and more flexible time, I can say yes to things. I can apply to things. And that's been wonderful. I have been invited to 3 residencies, one here in St. Andrews, one in Florenceville, New Brunswick, at the Andrew and Laura McCain Gallery, which was wonderful. And this last summer at the Beaverbrook Gallery, which was absolutely wonderful to spend 2 weeks working in the studio in the gallery. I've had 2 solo shows, and also I received a grant, which is a mentorship grant from the Sheila Hugh Mackay Foundation. And I worked with my mentor, Maggie Rose. We did some distance learning because of COVID and because she lives in Toronto. But we traveled together recently. This last September, we spent a month traveling to New York, Philadelphia, Washington, and Toronto. And our main goal was to see as much artwork as we could, to see especially painting, since we're both painters. And it was incredible. It was an incredible, life-changing and work-changing experience for me. I was able to spend 3 days at the Met, which was a dream of mine. So that is the most recent highlight. And to be honest, I'm kind of putting myself back together from that trip because there's so many ideas floating through my mind and paintings that I saw that I need to filter through.
Yes, all that stimulation, it just must
Mhm.
be percolating there in your brain as you
Yes.
remember it all and you've taken it in. What a wonderful experience you've had with that. Wow, that
Yes, it
really
was.
took off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it exciting to hear that someone who had a teaching career and really enjoyed your teaching career, but then moved on to the next part of your life, even though that part of your life was sort of an underpinning of everything else. It was always there. But now it's really taking leaps and bounds doing what you're doing now. So your retirement goal to become a professional artist, that's kind of happened, hasn't it?
It definitely has. And I'm loving it. I love it. Every day I get up early, every day, and I have my plan book, which looks just like a teacher plan book. And I just go forward and I really enjoy it. I enjoy the choice, the flexibility. I can make decisions about what I teach and when I teach. And I can also take a week in the studio and do a deep dive if I want to or I need to. So yes, I'm really having a great time.
Hmm. Yeah, and a lot of people would think that being an artist, there's not a lot of structure to it. But as you said, your teaching career has given you that structure that you can put into your art career
Mhm.
and being disciplined. And
Yes.
that is what it takes a lot of the time. People don't realize that discipline plays a big part in being in your studio every day, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think you're right. People don't realize that if you have work to produce in a defined period of time, if you have a solo show coming up and you have signed a contract
Mm.
to supply enough work to complete or to fill a space, that's a commitment that you've made and you have to fulfill that commitment. So you can't just wander in and think about working all the time. You have to get down to it. So there is a lot of discipline to it. I've never found motivation difficult because I would say I don't wait for inspiration to strike me. I just get in there and start working. And it's through working that's when the real inspiration is going to come.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and sometimes deadlines provide inspiration as well.
Mhm.
We all know what deadlines are like, especially when we were teachers, for
Yes.
sure. Yeah. So getting back to the teaching, what advice would you give to any teacher who's thinking about retiring or just about to retire, and they have that little secret thing going on in their head, I wish I could do something, but I'm still teaching. So what would you tell them?
Hmm. I think that I would tell them to take that little voice seriously and ask yourself, is this something that I would regret not doing 20 years from now? If I projected ahead, would I regret not retiring early? Think about that. And also maybe try it on, just mentally try on what it would be like to spend all day doing something. Is this something that you love, something that will hold your attention for years? Or is it something that you can keep doing on the side while you're teaching? Is that satisfactory? Um, and I think if you really thought about it enough, And especially the regret question, I think that the answer would be pretty clear.
Mhm. And planning ahead is also very helpful. I mean, I tell people when you're going to retire, you retire from something to something else, but you have to have that to something else, right? And so you have
Yes.
to have a dream, or you have to have something, a wish that you want fulfilled that you can go to and try out. Doesn't mean you're going to succeed all the time, but at least you can try. And as you say, you won't have any regrets that you haven't tried it.
Yes, I think that's very true. We only have one go around
Mhm.
in this life. So I say make the most of it.
Exactly,
For sure.
exactly. And enjoy every minute. I mean, especially when you're doing something you love. How great is that?
It's definitely pretty great. And I feel actually quite privileged to be able to do this. It being an artist is very difficult sometimes. Um, but to have had the richness of a career, supporting what I do now, and of course, having a pension is very helpful. Most artists in New Brunswick don't have that luxury. I do feel quite lucky. Um, I've earned this place in my life, but I also feel fortunate. So I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for my family that has always supported me and helped me go forward, picked me up during times of disappointment and rejection, because there's a lot of that in working in the art field. It's not always yes. Sometimes you get no's, but you have to be persistent and keep going.
Mhm. Yeah, you can't let the rough stuff get you down. Yeah, yeah. So what are
Very
you
true.
working on now, and where can people see your artworks?
Well, what I'm working on now is a series of work based on a trail cameras, and I actually have a trail camera, which some of you may be familiar with. And if you've been to St. Andrews, New Brunswick, you will see quite quickly that we are surrounded by deer. There's many of them in our backyards. And I became quite interested in these backyard deer, and I started capturing images of them and painting them. And the wonderful thing, I think, about trail cameras is that they are generally black and white if they're taken at night. And I love that idea of this world with no color, so that when I paint them, I can invent the color. I can have a pink deer or a green deer or a blue deer, and just transforming them with these invented colors is very exciting visually. It's a challenge, but it's also really fun. So there's a playfulness to them. Um, so I've been playing with that. The idea, here's one of my deer right here.
You,
So I play with these shapes, these animals, capturing these with my trail camera. And sometimes I imagine them in different places and different backgrounds. So I will collect images of different places, like an orchard or a bridge or an area in another friend's backyard. And I'll combine images of these different deer, maybe with images of people or trees, and then create a narrative, almost like a movie. So they're mysterious, sometimes funny, quirky, maybe sometimes a little bit unsettling. Some people have said that because of the nighttime imagery. So I've been working a lot, and I'm still working with that series. I do side projects as well to keep things interesting. So I do landscapes. Sometimes I do, sometimes I work in the studio, or sometimes I work plein air. I work directly from the subject outside. And sometimes I work from completely different themes and see where they go, and maybe a new series will emerge organically.
hmm. And you have paintings in galleries around New Brunswick now, I understand?
Yes, I right now my work can be seen at Gallery on Queen, which is in Fredericton, right across the street from City Hall, and that's the gallery where I'm represented right now. Sometimes I will have work in public galleries. temporary shows that you usually apply for or are invited to participate in. They might be group shows or solo shows. And you can also see my work on my website, which is www.theresamcknight.com, or Instagram, which I use as really an online portfolio, sort of almost like a blog to show the progression of my work. Many artists do that. So pretty easy to find.
That's great. I'm sure that many of the retired teachers will be interested in looking up your work and hopefully be able to go and see them in person at the gallery in Fredericton. And if you have any other upcoming shows in the St. John area or around the province, it's always great to know, so they can check out your website for that.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's great. So
yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Dream Catchers, Theresa. It was wonderful to hear about your journey through art and how it has sustained you throughout. We look forward to hearing more about your artworks in the future. And thanks to our viewers today for tuning in and learning about another NBSRT dream catcher who took the leap and followed her dreams.
Thank you, Diane. It was a pleasure.